This is the man you're listening to. This is the high school guidance counselor sitting you down and saying, okay, now I know you've seen a lot of tweets and watched a lot of Instagram videos about this Nick Fuentes guy. And I know he might sound funny, and I know he's saying a lot of things that make sense, and I know you're angry. I know it's hard for you to get a job right now. And I know you feel like the people around you are changing and that you have less and less in common with them. And I know you feel like it's getting harder just to be a Christian, a sane individual in your country. And I know you feel like these institutions who are meant to serve you, protect you, educate you, I know you feel disappointed in them, okay? But what Nick is saying about them, don't listen to that. He's come to some pretty awful, dark views about why those institutions and why those people have failed you. And if you continue listening to him, you're going to become just as dark and evil as he is. So how about this? Listen to me, okay? I'm a father. I have children. I'm married. I know how the world works. You should listen to me as an older man who has a family and has raised children. I'm a much better moral guidance counselor for you than this 26-year-old single childless podcaster. That's the general tone of this 5-minute lecture. And we've all heard this plenty of times before, primarily from women who are tone policing and trying to protect the feminist gynocracy that we live in. But time and time again, you see it from classical mainstream commercial conservatism as well.
The destruction of human freedom. But like every one of the superstates that preceded it, it has one iron rule. Logic is an enemy and truth is a menace.
Good afternoon and welcome to Beholden To Truth. It is your humble host, Joshua, here with you for another one of our happy hour sessions, sitting outside of the gym, getting caffeinated, sipping our pre-workout. Got to make our mental gains before we go in there and make our physical gains. That's the typical intro. You know how it goes. Today, I am going to be sitting down and breaking down a reaction video for you guys. A reaction to a reaction of a guy named Gates Garcia, who is I would call him a B or C level influencer on the conservative political landscape. He is a Daily Wire and Blaze TV contributor. He has, I think, what's called the We the People podcast. And I came across a tweet where he had a 5-minute video responding to Groyperism and the rising tide of young white conservative men holding conservative politicians and talking heads accountable, putting their feet to the fire, standing for what we truly care about, which is obviously the demographics of the country, the religious fabric of the country, the economic situation of the country, the identity of the country, trying to preserve that, or I don't know, conserve that. And this is going to be a reflection on the larger trend that Nick has spoken through lately, where it's obvious Nick has breached containment at this point. If it wasn't obvious before the Tucker Carlson interview, now the gates have been blown wide open. There is no more restricting or censoring or suppressing Nick's reach. When it comes to the exchange of ideas via social media, we're past the Rubicon at this point. It's too late to censor him or ban his accounts or ban people reposting his content. That's not going to work anymore. If they did try to resort to that, at this point, it would be so obvious that everybody would see the regime as completely authoritarian, tyrannical, and that would not stand. It's just too late for that, especially when he has people like Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, and many other people on the conservative circuit saying, I don't agree with some of the things he says, but I certainly agree far less with censoring him or not allowing him to go on public interviews, not allowing him to have a presence on social media and so on and so forth. We're conservatives. We stand behind the First Amendment. So it's as simple as that. I can sit here and disagree with him and push back against his ideas or his statements about world Jewry or about women or whatever else without having to say you're not allowed to express yourself and you're a bad person or anything like that. And so having already claimed that victory of we now have a beachhead, we have a seat at the table, we being the Groypers or the America First movement, there is no going back now and saying that dark corner of the internet, the so-called alt-right, they're just a fringe, small part of the population. They're just a disaffected, confused group of people. Don't listen to them. They're just weirdos. They're neo-Nazis and so on and so forth. There's too much momentum behind America First now. We do have legitimate grievances in that they are thought through. They're intellectual. We would say that they're morally unimpeachable. Much of them come directly from the Bible. And so with our seat at the table now, and having proved that it is a valid seat at the table and we can stand behind these things articulately and that we are intelligent, these feelings that we have aren't irrational coping with, ancient tropes or ancient anti-Semitism, racism, bigotry, misogyny, and all this other stuff. We've already won that victory of getting a seat at the table and established that censorship will not work. What Nick has said is the next stage in the war, though, is the institutions themselves conceding that they have lost the fight in terms of the information flowing freely on social media. But what they can still do is try to lock down the institutions. They say, okay, we can't ban him from Twitter and we can't ban him from Rumble and we can't stop him from having his own website. He has multiple million followers. There are many other influencers now who are leveraging the same messages with the same demands. It's too late for that. But what we can do is make sure people like that, who are demanding those things or using those talking points, those rhetorical devices, we cannot allow them into the institutions. We don't have to hire them for the Heritage Foundation, or we don't have to hire them to be policy writers at the think tanks, or Congress members don't have to hire them to be on their advisory team. Political campaigns, whether they're at the mayoral level, gubernatorial level, federal level, we can still try to block them out of infiltrating all of those various institutions or levers of change in society. And so that's the next stage. And this is what they are publicly saying. The Mark Levins, Josh Hammer, Ben Shapiro, they're saying, well, we're not calling to cancel them in terms of censorship, but what we are saying is nobody should hire them. They should not be allowed any kind of influence when it comes to the media or in our government, certainly not in shaping the education of the people. So they're saying, okay, sure, we're not going to say we should violate the First Amendment and not allow them to have free speech, but what we are saying is don't give these people jobs. Okay, don't allow them to actually accumulate influence in society. That's the next tactic where Nick has said, we've breached the first wall. They've retreated back to the second wall, which is the institutions themselves. And they are trying to fortify that position now. And so as we watch them try to fortify that position of protecting the institutions, this is where you have influencers and politicians trying to come up with the rhetoric that compromises on, okay, it's okay for him to have free speech, but really you shouldn't listen to him. And here's why. And so this individual who did a reaction video to the rising Groyper wave, I'm going to talk through this 5-minute lecture that he gave the young people of America about why they should not listen to Nick Fuentes, why it's dangerous to listen to him. It's a very thorough finger waving. It's a lot of moralizing. It's a lot of beating my chest about masculinity and what his interpretation of masculinity means and his interpretation of what it means to be a Christian means. And his interpretation is in complete contradiction to everything Nick stands for. And he, as an older man who is married and has kids, he's obviously the wiser of the two. So stop listening to Nick. Listen to this guy who has a wife and kids and who contributes content to the Daily Wire and Blaze TV. So this is going to be a fun one. It's going to be a little bit long. We'll have to probably do it in multiple parts. So strap in. I think you're going to enjoy this because I'm going to quote verbatim his arguments and then I will respond to each of them. So before I go into thoroughly dismantling his high school guidance counselor, camp counselor, kindergarten teacher, tone policing, pro-feminist, pro-Zionist lecture that he wants to give young Groypers, I think it's important, just like any time we're examining somebody's positions, to check their resume and check their record in terms of their public statements. And so I went through his Twitter because he posted this reaction video, I think yesterday. And so I just went through the last 1 week of his Twitter activity. I'm sure there's probably multiple years worth of it. But I was just curious to see, what is this guy talking about before he started to go on and on about Groypers and how they need to turn away from Nick Fuentes and turn toward the likes of Glenn Beck and Ben Shapiro. And so here's just a couple of examples of his previous tweets in the last week. On November 7th, he bemoans, well, in the conservative world, we've started attacking people instead of ideas. And in doing so, we've lost sight of the real enemy. Okay, so I think that's probably true. We should be always focused on the ideas and not necessarily the people, because the ideas are the things that spread like contagion, such as Zionism, such as feminism, communism. It's far more important to look at the ideas than the individuals propagating them. However, that's a little hypocritical to say, well, we really shouldn't be attacking people. We should be attacking the ideas those people hold. But then 5 days later, he comes out with a 5-minute scripted video, by the way, I want to point out, directly attacking Nick Fuentes. Not his ideas. He doesn't go into what it means to be America first, that America first means America must be a sovereign country. It must reflect the historic identity ethnically and religiously that it had for 350 years. That's what America first means. That's what Nick has always fought for. Nick has fought for the patriarchy, which is God's design for humankind. Those are the core beliefs that Nick has fought for and that he advocates for on a nightly basis. That's unchanging, whether or not he uses uncouth language. He says things that are politically incorrect. He makes insensitive jokes about any of those subjects. If we're going to have an intelligent conversation about going after the ideas people present rather than the people themselves, Mr. Gates Garcia, let's talk about white identity, the changing demographic in America and all of Europe. Is it fair and moral for the people who built the country and sustained it for 350 years to lose control over their country, to lose their sovereignty, for their progeny to grow up in a foreign land of people speaking foreign languages, worshiping foreign gods with no devotion to the ancestors of the country? Is that fair? Is that moral? Would you impose that on the African nations or the Asian nations or the Arab nations? Would any of them be okay with that if you impose that on them? Are you able to entertain that conversation, Mr. Gates Garcia, standing up for the white majority? The insistence that this country must be led by white people because we built it, it's ours, it's our sacred inheritance. We're the only ones who would fight for that. We can't expect non-white people to say that they want a white majority and white leaders. And so the onus is on us, young white people, to go out and militantly, not in terms of weapons and violence, but ideologically, militantly stand on the hard line that this is a white European country. And the majority must reflect that, and our leadership must reflect that. Our policy must reflect that. When are you going to engage with that idea rather than engage with Nick's personality of being politically incorrect, of saying insensitive things about women or minorities or Jews or whoever else? Can we engage with the idea? How about the idea that America was founded on Christian principles, not Talmudic, rabbinic, Jewish principles? Are we confused about that? Did the founding fathers and the Puritans and Pilgrims cite the Talmud when they were establishing their communities? Were Harvard and Yale the first institutions of higher learning in America established here on this soil? When they were built, were they built to teach the Torah and the Talmud? Or were they built to teach the Holy Bible, including the New Testament, specifically that Jesus Christ is God? When the first Congress sat down and solicited tax money to reprint editions of the Bible to distribute to the population, to give them a moral framework to exist as citizens, was that a collection of funds to distribute the Talmud or the Quran or the Bhagavad Gita? Or was it the New Testament? When it comes to the religious participation of the population of this country, was this a 90% Christian country for the first 350 years? Or was it 50% Christian, 10% Jewish, 10% Islamic, 10% Hindu, 10% pagan? No, it was 90% Christian. 9 out of 10 people in this country were Christian. The religious identity of this country at the governmental level and at the citizen level was Christian. Can we engage with that idea that that was one of the founding principles in combination with the culture of the various European people who came here that made America successful? Can we not defend that to the exclusion of all other religions? No other religions had anything to do with the founding of America, particularly not religions that outright reject Jesus Christ, particularly religions that say that people who are not of our bloodline are not even human, that they are not bestowed human rights. And I'm sure you know which religion I'm talking about. Can we engage with the idea that America, in order to be a healthy nation that is pleasing to God, must be a majority Christian nation led by Christian individuals? Can we engage with that idea? Because that's the idea that Nick puts forth. I don't hear you engaging with that. I hear you defaming and distracting from Nick's message, pointing to politically incorrect statements. When it comes to the sovereignty of America, the third pillar of America first, after you have the ethnic demographic conversation, after you have the religious conversation, there is obviously the component of every nation needing to be sovereign over itself. We don't want to be the vassal state. We don't want to be compromised by some other nation, beholden to some other nation. We have to be making the decisions about the safety, the economic health, the future, the reputation, the peoplehood of our nation. No other nation or foreigners should be controlling to any meaningful degree those decisions and our future. Can we have an exchange of ideas on that conversation? Because that's the conversation Nick has always been trying to put forth, that there is a foreign nation of foreigners who have a foreign allegiance. They have an alien point of view when it comes to America, that they are religiously tolerant or religiously ambivalent. They don't care if an infinite flood of non-Christians come into our country and change the spiritual fabric of it. They don't care if people are erecting statues to idols, something that is obviously condemned all throughout the Bible. Okay, they don't care if the ethnic fabric of the country changes. Why? Because it makes them more comfortable, because they themselves are alien in this land. They don't care if another country, particularly Israel, is receiving benefits militarily, economically, diplomatically, intelligence, even at the cost of our nation. When we have citizens in our country who can't feed ourselves, can't afford to have children, can't afford to buy homes, can't afford to go to school, when they apply for jobs, preferential treatment is given to foreigners. When that is the situation in our country, they are still being moralized and lectured about their allegiance to another country. When they are asking their government, hey, can you please just focus on me, my family, our economic safety, our streets, the level of crime, the level of opportunity in our nation, my children's future. Can you please just focus on those things? Well, unfortunately, if you're a Ben Shapiro or if you're a Josh Hammer or a Mark Levin or whatever other Zionist, you're going to say, yeah, that stuff sounds good, but let's just first focus on making sure our relationship with Israel is undisturbed in perpetuity. They are petitioning for another 20-year memorandum of understanding, which is a financial obligation to give Israel $4 billion more every year for the next 20 years. And they want that done right now with urgency, because they see the American population, both left and right, are finally letting go. They are finally calling for a divorce of this greatest alliance with America and Israel. But they want it hard, in contract, written down, obligated for the next 2 decades, that we will continue to give them at least $4 billion in direct aid. And obviously they would want acute benefits later on whenever they ignite the war with Iran again or whichever other nation. And so for people to simply be America first and say, hey, here's my idea. You want to exchange with my idea, but not me as a person? My idea is that Israel lobbying our government through AIPAC, through individual Jewish billionaire donors like Lauder, like Adelson, like Ackman, pick whichever one you want, Soros, Fink, all of those people who have more interest in globalism or Zionism than Americanism, protecting the American identity, its people, its faith, its soil, all of them need to be ousted from their positions of influence, whether it is made formally illegal or whatever means necessary. Obviously, that's not a call to violence, but through whatever means necessary, the only people influencing politics in the future of America, shaping the information diet in our media, shaping the worldview of our population through education, controlling our currency and our economic situation, yeah, they all have to be America first. Not America and Israel, not 50-50, not 40-60. They need to be 100% America first. That's the exchange of ideas that you should be engaging with, because you say you're a man who wants to engage with the ideas and less so about the individual. Well, here you are making a 5-minute video talking about the individual and not his ideas. That's just a tweet from 5 days ago. What's going on, you guys? It is yours truly, Joshua, founder of Beholden To Truth. Just wanted to say, if you'd like to help out the platform, go to beholdentotruth.com. You can get yourself something from the merch line, some of these anti-Zog occupation sleeveless t-shirts, tank tops, hoodies, joggers, sweatshorts, whatever you may need for whatever season you are in. We got them at beholdentotruth.com. It goes a long way in supporting the platform and waking people up. I've had several people come up to me at the gas station, at the gym, at the grocery store. Hey man, I like that shirt. You know what that means. And it kicks off a conversation. We're swapping Instagrams. This is how you meet people who know what's going on, who probably share much of the same worldview that you do. It's an open invitation for everybody to just step right in. So I appreciate you guys' support. Head to beholdentotruth.com and get your own. On November 4th, he's doing the absolutely critical work of addressing women in sports and how the left doesn't really champion women because they're pro-transgender. They allow men in women's changing rooms and in women's sports. So they're not really as feminist as they proclaim. He's the real feminist, and we're going to get to that. He's the real champion of women. Conservatism and Christianity, those are the real champions of women. And that's not to say that Christianity doesn't love and adore women. I'm just saying he's presenting an argument. He's presenting the Matt Walsh, what is a woman argument of the left pretends to care about women, but we actually care about women. We really, really love and adore and want to promote women. He's still doing this. It's 2025. The nation is in free fall collapse. The foreign horde is living amongst us. Women are running all of our civil institutions into the ground, no less, by the way. Women are aborting 1 million children per year. Women have already been elevated to the highest levers of society, whether that's vice president, Congress members, CEOs, all throughout our companies. They've already been championed, okay? Does anybody at this day and age in 2025 feel like we haven't done a good job in championing women? Do we really need more of that from the conservative party? Do we really need conservative men who are supposed to be protecting the biblical patriarchy going out and saying we should really be championing women more? You know, the problems with society right now are that we really haven't elevated women enough. You know, that's kind of what I feel like is going on. You know, you look at the apostasy from the church, you look at the problems with the mass immigration, you look at the culture wars. I think a lot of that's coming from the fact that we haven't elevated women enough. Really? Like, how could you possibly come to that interpretation, especially as a conservative Christian? But he's still out here beating that drum. Conservatives are the real champions of women. Leftists just cosplay and LARP and pretend to advocate for women. No, in fact, I think both sides have gone dramatically overboard on the championing of women. On Halloween, he has another tweet about this where he says, dropping another truth bomb on all of us, liberals still can't answer in 2025, what is a woman? Like, this is why you're losing. This is why the Groypers will never listen to you, because you're still having a conversation that was stale 10 years ago. You're still acting like this is a huge truth bomb. This is something that we need to be talking through on a daily basis, creating entire documentaries and films about and laughing about. Can you believe that the left and these liberals, progressives, can't answer what is a woman? That's your approach to wooing the young men of America? You don't think they understand that already? Do you think that's like popcorn entertainment for them? They don't want popcorn entertainment. They're tired of the Matt Walshes of the world talking about how woke Disney movies are and casting Snow White as some non-white minority. Some CEO boss girl in the newest Avengers movie. Okay? We're way, way beyond that. We've diagnosed wokeism as cancer. We've moved on. We've moved on to the conversation of where does wokeism come from? Why can't we talk about that? Where does cultural Marxism come from? Where does feminism come from? Where does mass immigration come from? What are the differences between the genders, and how do they existentially present a problem when you try to pretend that they are interchangeable? When you try to pretend that you can elevate or champion women into leadership positions in the household, in the church, in the government, in academia. Are you willing to have that conversation? No, absolutely not. And just a couple of days ago, he has on Twitter to say, anti-Jewish sentiment on the right is blasphemous. Christian Zionism isn't a modern political fad. It's the natural outflow of biblical belief. Oh, really? So when Jesus said in the book of John, chapter 14, verse 6, I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. Nobody comes to the Father except through me. Really? Well, what does Zionism preach? Does Zionism preach that we must have a protected land for Christians to worship Jesus Christ? Is that what it preaches? No. It is the blasphemous argument that says we must have a protected land for Jews to practice a faith that has rejected Jesus Christ. So which of these two things are blasphemous? Is it Zionism or is it Christianity to stand for what Jesus himself says in the book of John, that there is no way to know God except through the acknowledgement of Jesus Christ as God? I think it's actually blasphemous to say that all of us Christians are morally and biblically obligated to make sure there is a slice of land on this physical earth for an ethnic group of people to persist in their denial that Jesus Christ is God. I'm pretty sure that's the blasphemy. Not saying Jews, Islamic people, Hindus, Buddhists, pagans, Sikhs, whoever else, whatever other religion, according to John 14:6, anyone who has rejected Jesus Christ as God, they are wrong according to Jesus Christ. And so why would Christians be obligated to safeguard a religion that is wrong? It makes no sense. Furthermore, you have the statements of Jesus saying that anybody who has rejected the Messiah is the Antichrist. Again, Zionism in principle, whether you see it as a political movement or a religious movement or a fusion of the two, in principle, it is a movement for the ethnic and religious group of Jews to come together to preserve their ethnicity and their religion. They are inextricably tied together because their religion is an ethno-religion. And to say that, according to Jesus Christ, anyone who has rejected him, the cornerstone, the Messiah, they are Antichrist, that's a biblical statement. That's not blasphemy. The opposite is blasphemy. So anti-Jewish sentiment, as he calls it, is the words of Jesus Christ. If the Jewish religion, Judaism, rejects Jesus Christ, then that's not an anti-Jewish statement. That is the statement of Jesus Christ in the New Testament. So this is the man lecturing you about anti-Semitism or anti-Jewish statements. Perhaps it's because he contributes to two major Zionist organizations, Blaze TV and Daily Wire. So that's just some context. Before I even get into the 5-minute video that he put out directly attacking Nick Fuentes and trying to pull the Groypers away from him, this is the man you're listening to. This is the high school guidance counselor sitting you down and saying, okay, now I know you've seen a lot of tweets and watched a lot of Instagram videos about this Nick Fuentes guy. And I know he might sound funny. And I know he's saying a lot of things that make sense. And I know you're angry. I know it's hard for you to get a job right now. And I know you feel like the people around you are changing and that you have less and less in common with them. And I know you feel like it's getting harder just to be a Christian, a sane individual in your country. And I know you feel like these institutions who are meant to serve you, protect you, educate you, I know you feel disappointed in them, okay? But what Nick is saying about them, don't listen to that. He's come to some pretty awful, dark views about why those institutions and why those people have failed you. And if you continue listening to him, you're going to become just as dark and evil as he is. So how about this? Listen to me, okay? I'm a father. I have children. I'm married. I know how the world works. You should listen to me as an older man who has a family and has raised children. I'm a much better moral guidance counselor for you than this 26-year-old single childless podcaster. That's the general tone of this 5-minute lecture. And we've all heard this plenty of times before, primarily from women who are tone policing and trying to protect the feminist gynocracy that we live in. But time and time again, you see it from classical mainstream commercial conservatism as well. That it's still tone policing, it's still political correctness, it's still crypto feminism. And so here we go. That's who we're dealing with. And so let's get into this 5-minute long scripted from a teleprompter lecture that he gives us.
The few brave men who have actually tried to go out and do something about white genocide or talk about Jewish influence, the Zionist-occupied government, we all know that they get crucified, their careers get destroyed, and so we need to find ways to support each other. One of the ways that I have done that is by creating my Substack, where there are exclusive early access to documentaries, my weekly vlogs, there are ebooks there. There's even an opportunity to set up a one-on-one 30-minute Ask Me Anything if you'd like. All of the proceeds from my Substack, from my YouTube channel, from the merch gets reinvested in the platform. I use that to pay my employees. I use that to buy the equipment that I need, the cameras, the lights, the MacBook, all the books, all of the software, pay for marketing, everything else, but also it protects my literal life. So if you want to help out, please do head on to Substack, get yourself a subscription. Thank you. I appreciate it. America first and Christ is King.